This is a hybrid war. The battlefield is in the mind. A lot of narratives are being targeted at Ukrainians and at the Western audience, just as the missiles are flying towards Ukraine. So the information space as a result is flooded with all sorts of analysis and narratives. How do we bring clarity without risking security when speaking about the weapons?
That's a great question. The Ukrainian General Staff and the government have generally done an excellent job protecting information. I mean, I see a lot of people that are frustrated because they don't know what the Ukrainian General Staff is planning, but we shouldn't know. We're not entitled to know, and it's important. So, people should understand that the government is not going to reveal what their plans are, nor should they reveal what their capabilities are, how much ammunition they are. These are all the kinds of critical information that the Russians would love to know. So, of course, the government should not and will not reveal that kind of information. And I would say that on the U.S. side and the other allies, the same thing is true. Other than when the president or the White House announces we have provided this package of $40 billion or this much ammunition has been provided, once it's handed over to Ukraine, you're not going to hear anybody talking specifically about what the Ukrainians have. This is not important. It is important that the Russians not have that. So that requires a little more discipline on all of our parts. Now, there is confusion, though, when the president says 200 killed per day, and then somebody else says 100 killed per day. I don't know that those numbers, because those are significant numbers, and when they get out into the open, let's say, you're not sure what that really means, because people will naturally start doing math. Okay, 200 per day for how many days? How long can Ukraine do this? To be clear, Ukraine is suffering a lot of casualties because of Russian artillery. There's no doubt about that. And perhaps there's the intention of releasing numbers like this is to perhaps motivate us to do more, to go faster. I think that there is so much more going on that is not publicly available. I mean, I'm very confident of this. There is so much that's happening that is not in the public eye in terms of capabilities and ammunition that's being provided. It might not be helpful when you have different numbers coming out of the president's office or the Ukrainian government. It confuses people.
Agreed, and this is why we decided to have the series of interviews with the experts to reveal the information that is safe to be revealed and just clarify the situation for the general public. And having said that, I want to start with the big picture questions and then go into the specifics the way we safely can. So a very general question: what weapons does Ukraine need to win?
So the capability that Ukraine needs is what is finally beginning to arrive in quantity. And this is the capability to destroy Russian artillery and rockets. That's the most important thing, because that's what's causing the most damage, is Russian artillery and rockets. So how can we help Ukraine destroy or disrupt that? So I think when you see HIMARS or howitzers or other systems arriving, that's an important part of the capability. And of course, you need the ammunition and the maintenance that will come with that. So that's the first part. I think capability to keep ships away is already on the ground there, as we have seen, and Ukraine has done a good job with that. I would like to see an increase in the capability to destroy. Where does the Russian Air Force come from? I mean, because the Russian Air Force does not want to go inside Ukraine now. They are terrified of Ukrainian air defense. So they launch missiles from inside Belarus and inside Russia. I think that Ukraine needs the capability to hit those airfields from which those aircraft are flying. They should not be able to just sit safely on the other side of the border launching missiles into apartment buildings and shopping malls. Those are the capabilities I think that are most needed.
Thank you for that. And since you touched upon the territorial question, I want to ask about your opinion on the do not provoke Russia narrative, which, in other words, the opinion, which is quite popular in some circles, that Ukraine should not attack Russian military objects, neither in Ukraine, nor in temporarily occupied territories, nor in the Russian Federation territory.
I think this was a well-intended but misguided policy or attitude that somehow what we do provokes Russia. That this whole attack, which started in 2014, is unprovoked. All of the justifications given by the Kremlin have proven to be false, as most people suspected anyway, that this was a totally false narrative. So it's not like they need to be provoked. They are doing things that they want to do until they are stopped. And so we should stop limiting what we're doing out of fear of provocation of the Kremlin, because actually none of what we do provokes them. You will remember that back when this started in February, there were debates about whether or not to provide Stinger to Ukrainian forces because of fear that it might provoke Russia if a Russian helicopter was shot down with a US-made Stinger. I mean, how ridiculous does that seem now? We're way past that. And so Russia has actually not reacted in any meaningful way to each step of new equipment, new capability. They haven't, because they can't. They don't have the ability to do anything else. There's an awful lot of responsibility on the shoulders of the US president, the British prime minister, the German chancellor, and so on. So of course they have to be concerned about escalation. Could this get further out of control? But I think we know by now that there's nothing that we're going to do with Ukraine that is a threat to the Russian state. And I think that's an important step. And we should stop wringing our hands about, oh, we can't give this long-range rocket because it might provoke Russia.
I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, there is a certain evolution of the weapon supply, and looks like it's just, in a way, the sons of innocence and experience. And as the West learns, they might be arriving at different conclusions. Thank you for that. And I want to go into some specifics in whatever we safely can, starting with land. Speaking of MLRS, we know that Podolak recently came up with the number 300, which was argued about a lot on social media. What, in your opinion, is the magic number? How many does Ukraine need?
So I'm going to give you the same answer that I would give if we were talking in a secure network in an official position. Okay, I don't talk about numbers of specific weapon systems. I talk about the effect that's needed that we want to achieve, and the effect that we want to achieve is to destroy Russian artillery and rockets. But you don't have to do it across the entire front. You focus your effort on the key places that will cause the Russians to crack, to create opportunity for counterattack, for example. Or so there is no magic number. I don't know where the number 300 came from. That is a significant number. I think what's more important is making sure you have endless amounts of ammunition that can be used to hit the Russian artillery and rockets, and then of course the headquarters and the ammunition storage sites for those. I am 100% certain that the actual numbers are being discussed between Defense Minister and Chief of Defense of Ukraine and Secretary of Defense and Chief of the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff in person in the proper venue and using the proper methods. So there's no mistake on what's needed between the countries. So when somebody puts a number out in public like that, I think it actually is not helpful.
Well, thanks for that. And you already started to answer my next question, which is about ammunition and logistics, of course. And in your previous answer, you mentioned that Russia has endless supply of the Soviet artillery ammunition. But I have also read and heard that, on the other hand, Soviet ammunition is running out. There are also various pieces of information and sometimes rumors that countries like Bulgaria or Eastern Bloc countries have this ammunition and would be willing to share with Ukraine. Can you speak a little bit about that?
One of the flaws in my analysis is that I do not know how much ammunition Russia still has of conventional artillery and rocket ammunition. They seem to have endless amounts. I'm sure they have a lot. I don't know how much, and I don't know how much they started with. The consumption rate, what they're using now, is huge. I mean, they've already fired more than we did in 20 years in Iraq and Afghanistan. But I saw 2 days ago that they were starting to get ammunition out of storage from Belarus. So I don't know how much is there. So I have to assume that they have enough of that artillery ammunition to keep fighting for the rest of the year, which is why it's so important that we target the artillery and rocket launchers of the Russian forces, destroy them, and also the headquarters that does the planning and coordination of the fires. And then, of course, the distribution network, the trains or the convoys or whatever brings that ammunition to the front. I have to assume that they've got almost endless amounts. When it comes to precision weapons, the big missiles and rockets, that is, I think they are below 50% of what they have. They have used so many against civilian targets, and they don't have the ability to replace those because they require some components that have to be imported. And of course, sanctions have stopped that. So I do think we're soon approaching the end of precision weapons that the Russians have.
Thank you. That is a really great summary. Now that we know that the Western weapons are finally arriving at the front line in Ukraine, and the Russians probably have the same strategy and aim to destroy it. How hard would it be for the Ukrainian army to protect these new weapons?
Well, to protect artillery and rocket launchers, of course, you have to conceal the location. I mean, you can't just park it in a sunflower field and expect it to survive, because the Russians, like Ukraine, have radar that detects incoming artillery, and it calculates what we call the point of origin. Where did it come from? And then, of course, you shoot back at that spot. So that means to protect your own artillery and rocket launchers, after a short amount of time, after firing 2, 3, 4, 5 times, you have to move. And that requires discipline and training, and it's no fun, you can be sure, but it's about survival. So a U.S. Artillery unit would move perhaps 3, 4, 5 times a day, depending on how many times they fired. And the location you need to protect from concealment from drones, and you have to be dispersed. You can't be close together, because then when the enemy shoots back, if you're too close together, they are able to hit more targets. This is an important, hard part of protecting your own systems, is doing what we call survivability moves. But also you have to manage your signature of not just the visual signature, but also the electronic signature. You know, radios, computers all give off a signature that can be detected by some drones. So you have to think about that as well.
Thank you. And you are transitioning right into my next question, which is about Air Force and the question traditional about the jets. What is the situation there? And how long does the training of the pilots take for the newly arriving jets? And also you touched upon the drones situation, and there's a lot of talk of certain models are not working well in Ukraine, such as Great Eagles, for instance, in comparison with Afghanistan. So would you comment on that situation, please?
Okay, so the drones, it's useful to for all of us to keep in mind that there is no one weapon that is, the silver bullet, that there's nothing that by itself is going to change everything. It has to be employed in a clever way as part of an overall concept of operation. So even though everybody watched video of drones in Nagorno-Karabakh, just hitting tank after tank after tank, when you think about it, every target that they hit was sitting out in the open. It was easy to identify. And the Azeris had a concept where the drone strikes were part of the overall plan. Because both sides use drones, of course, the natural thing is you begin to come up with defenses. How do you stop the drones? And many of the drones depend on GPS for navigation, targeting, and so on. And so the Russians have the ability to block GPS signals in many cases. I don't know which ones and how much, but I have also heard and read that many of the drones are not being as effective as they were because of Russian electronic warfare capability. So you have to understand that, which means, of course, that Ukraine is trying, I'm sure, to locate where are these jamming systems, because you want to destroy them. So it's not just launching a drone and it flies around and takes a shot. It has to be employed with other things. Still, it's an effective tool, but not by itself. For the Air Force, this was, I think, the Russians made several miscalculations. And one of the biggest miscalculations they made was a failure to establish air superiority from the very beginning. The U.S. Air Force, that's job one, air superiority. We say you want to achieve freedom from attack so that you have freedom to attack. And the Russians failed they didn't even try, I don't think, to establish air superiority. Air superiority means not only do you have to knock down your adversary's aircraft, which they have not done, you have to destroy all the airfields, you have to destroy all the air defense systems. And the Russians did not have a comprehensive plan for doing that. I don't think they have the capability. They have a lot of expensive airplanes, but that does not mean they have a good Air Force. There's pilot training to be able to take off and fly and land. That's one thing. But to be part of a formation, to be part of an offensive operation, to fly into airspace that is contested, that requires a whole level of training. It's very expensive. It takes a lot of time. It's clear that the Russians don't have that ability. And so that's why they don't even fly into Ukraine now. They stay mostly inside Russian airspace and in the airspace of Belarus versus coming in to Ukraine. Ukraine has good pilots, not enough, obviously, but they have pilots. They know how to fly already. So, but the same thing would be true of them. They'd have to, if they do receive new aircraft, whatever type, they have to be able to fight the aircraft in a combat environment. So there's training required there as well.
The last aspect of war, which is sea and anti-ship missile system. Can you comment on that?
The Russian Navy has a very healthy respect for Ukraine's ability to sink a ship now. With the last two Russian ships that were destroyed by Neptune and then Harpoon, these are important capabilities. I don't think the Russians have any hope of ever getting to Odessa because of that. That's my view. I overestimated their ability to do amphibious operations. I had thought they would be putting Marines, their naval infantry in different places, and they haven't done it. And this is very hard. It requires training and practice and capabilities. And clearly they have not done that, which is fortunate. obviously. But I think we've also seen that the Russian Navy is in just as bad a condition as the Russian Air Force and the land forces. They were not trained on tough training, how to conduct joint operations where you integrate air, land, and sea. They haven't done it. And the technology on board their ships is not up to modern standards. So I think, frankly, I don't discount them, but they have not been a significant factor other than launching a missile into towns and cities. The submarines, I think the submarine force of the Russian Navy is probably very capable.
And if possible, just very briefly on close the sky situation.
Closing the skies means being able to stop these missiles that are flying into civilian targets. And I heard yesterday that the administration is going to provide to Ukraine additional air and missile defense systems. I think that will certainly be helpful. But I also think that it's not just about shooting down missiles. It's about going to the source. Where are they coming from? And being able to destroy airfields or other launchers from which these aircraft and missiles are taking off. That's got to be targeted as well.
Thank you very much for this comprehensive and deep analysis. We can't thank you enough for Euromaidan Press reporting from Odessa, Ukraine. Zarina Zabrisky. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you for the privilege and the opportunity.